Hello, and welcome to the Magic Lantern DVD guide for the Nikon D80. The D80 is the successor to the D70S. It offers serious amateur photographers a compact, lightweight digital SLR with many of the specifications, features, and characteristics of Nikon's D200, but with a price tag that's about $700 less. You can take this camera as a D200 Lite. The 10 megapixel resolution, rock solid feel, 3 frames per second burst mode, large LCD screen, and dozens of customization options give the D80 enough versatility to compete effectively with any digital SLR on the market in its price range. It's an excellent camera that will have you shooting stunning images for years to come. But like all digital SLRs, the D80 has lots of features and functions that can be confusing to understand first, even for experienced SLR owners. And that's why I'm going to cut through the clutter and teach you what you need to know to get started shooting great pictures with the D80 right away. Because we've had a lot of ground to cover, I'm going to assume that you already have an understanding of basic photographic terms and concepts like f-stop, depth of field, and shutter speed. The purpose of this DVD is to help you understand specifically how D80 operates, so that you can choose the setup options and shooting techniques that will work best for you. If you want to learn more about general photographic techniques, I suggest you get any of the dozens of large photography books. They are excellent and offer something for every skill level. But as I said, this DVD has been created to get you up to speed on the D80 as quickly as possible. So let's get started. I think the best place to begin is to take a walk around the camera and get familiar with the functions of the external buttons, switches, and other controls. Then we'll go back later and take a closer look at most of them and other chapters of the DVD. I recommend that you get your camera out and follow along with me. At times, you may want to pause the DVD to experiment with settings, try things out for yourself. Also, keep in mind, because there are so many menu choices and buttons on the D80, sometimes there are several different ways to do something. I'm not going to stop and point them all out. I'll show you one way, but don't be surprised if you discover a different way that works even better for you. The D80's interface is well thought out. Many of the functions that you use most often are easily accessible via controls on the body, and that's great. It's a lot faster and easier just to flip a switch or turn a dial than it is to change settings with the menus. The most logical place to begin a tour is on the top of the camera with the power switch. To turn the camera on, I just rotate the switch to the position, and it's ready and waiting by the time I can put my eye to the viewfinder. Now, at times, you may want to illuminate the LCD control panel so that you can see it better in low light. You can do that by rotating the power switch a little further, and the panel will light up for 5 seconds. You can't really see any difference on the studio light, but normally I think the control panel is so much easier to read with the backlight on that I've actually used the menu system on my camera to change the setting so that the backlight comes on whenever I touch any button. As with most Nikon SLRs, the control panel communicates a lot of information about current camera settings and provides an interface for setting many of the most important controls. In fact, there are about 24 different camera settings that can appear at various times on the control panel, including battery condition, shutter speed, f-stop, the shooting mode, the remaining capacity of the memory card, the metering mode, the autofocus mode, the selected focus area, image quality, image size, and the white balance setting. Learning to understand what all of this information means and then how to change the camera settings represented on the display will be very important to the quality of the pictures you take. We'll be learning a lot more about all of these settings throughout the rest of the DVD. Nested inside the power switch is the shutter release button. Pressing it halfway down will activate the autofocus and auto exposure functions so that the camera can start making its calculations for taking the best picture. Now, to get the best results with an SLR, you need to press the shutter button halfway down, hold it there for a beat or two while the camera determines the best settings, and then press the shutter button the rest of the way to actually take the photo. Next to the shutter release is the metering mode button for determining how the camera calculates the exposure for each picture, and the exposure compensation button that can be used to override the automatic exposure settings. To use either control, you just press the button down while you turn the main command dial at the rear of the camera to cycle through the choices. We'll talk more about both of these controls later on in the chapter on exposure. Next, there's the shooting mode button. There are 5 shooting mode choices on the D80 that control what the camera does when you press the shutter button. Now, most of the time, you'll want the camera to take just one picture only, but sometimes you'll want to fire off several pictures in a row, or maybe you want to use the self-timer so you can run over and get to the picture yourself. Changing the shooting mode is accomplished the same way that other camera settings are changed. Just press the button and rotate the main command dial. The choices are single frame. This is the mode you'll use most often. The camera takes one photo each time the shutter release button is pressed. Continuous. In this mode, the camera will record up to 3 frames per second for as long as you hold down the shutter button or until the buffer is full. Normally, you'll be able to shoot about 23 pictures in a row before the camera bogs down. Self-timer. Using the timer delays taking the picture by several seconds after you press the shutter button. The default length of the delay is 10 seconds, but it can easily be changed to 2 seconds, 5 seconds, or 20 seconds by changing the appropriate menu setting. The delayed remote and quick response remote settings both require the use of an optional remote control for releasing the shutter without touching the camera. This is a great way to prevent blurry images while shooting at slow shutter speeds with the camera on tripod. Next is the autofocus mode button, with 3 choices for controlling how the camera focuses the lens. They are auto select, single servo, and continuous servo. We'll talk about each of them in the focus chapter. Over on the other side of the camera is the mode dial for selecting the camera's shooting mode. The D80 has 11 different shooting modes that determine how the camera calculates the exposure, fires the flash, processes the image before saving it to the memory card, and even how the autofocus system works. Choosing the right mode for any given situation will make all the difference in how your pictures turn out. We'll take a detailed look at the different modes in a later chapter, and I'll have some suggestions as to which ones to use, when to use them, and which ones to avoid using at all. On the front of the D80, you'll find a number of other controls. Starting at the upper left corner, there's the sub-command dial, not to be confused with the main command dial we saw on the rear of the camera. As you'll see later, the sub-command dial's primary purpose is to fine-tune the white balance and set the aperture of lens when you're shooting in either aperture priority or manual exposure modes. Over here, this small light actually serves 3 purposes. First, it functions as the autofocus assist illuminator by shining a beam of light to help the camera focus when you're shooting in dark surroundings. Second, in self-timer mode, it blinks while the timer counts down, then shines steadily for 2 seconds before the picture is taken. And third, we've got red eye reduction turned on for the flash. It lights for approximately 1 second just before the picture is taken to cause the subject's pupils to contract. Below this light is a special programmable function button that gives you instant access to any one of 9 functions that you choose. You can program this button to do things like turning off the flash temporarily, locking in the flash exposure, or even changing the exposure metering method. Below that is the depth of field preview button. When you press this button, the lens closes down the actual aperture it will use to take the photo, so that you can see what the depth of field will look like when you take the picture. Moving over on the other side of the lens, we'll start at the bottom and work our way up the camera. This switch is the focus mode selector, and it offers two choices: autofocus or manual focus. In the AF position, the camera's autofocus system is in control, and with certain lenses, you shouldn't try to focus the lens manually or you could damage it. If you want to focus a lens manually, it's good practice to make sure this switch is in the M position. Next is the lens release button. One of the great things about having an SLR is the ability to change lenses to suit different shooting situations. The focal length of the lens will have a huge effect on what your pictures look like. Certain subjects lend themselves to specific focal lengths. For example, wildlife and sports are often best photographed using a focal length of 200 millimeters or longer. Portraits look great when shot with focal lengths between 50 and 80 millimeters, while landscapes often demand the use of shorter focal lengths around 20 millimeters or less. To remove a lens from the camera, make sure the camera is turned off. Then press down on the button, turn the lens clockwise, and take it off. Now to mount a lens on the camera, again, make sure the power is turned off. Align the index marks, slide the lens firmly into the mount, and then rotate counterclockwise until you hear it lock into place. Next is the bracketing button, which is used to turn on and off two different types of bracketing, either white balance or exposure. Bracketing is a common feature found on SLRs that makes it easy to capture multiple images of the same scene with slightly different exposure or white balance values. And then later on, you can choose which one of them looks best. Over here, the flash mode button is used to control how the flash functions. And there are several choices for red eye reduction, rear sync, slow sync, and others. We'll talk about them later. In some shooting modes, pressing this button will also release the built-in flash and activate it for shooting. And when you're done with it, just press the flash back down until it locks in place. For more flash power, less red eye, and more flexibility, you can also attach an optional external flash to the hot shoe. Now, on the left side of the camera, under these two covers, we find four jacks. Starting at the bottom, the first jack is for connecting an optional remote control. Like I said, using a remote shutter release while the camera is on a tripod is the best way to trip the shutter without even touching the camera. The next jack is for connecting your D80 to a television monitor with a supplied AV cable. That way you can view your pictures on a TV instead of the LCD. The third jack is for connecting an optional AC adapter. And the last jack is a standard USB port for connecting the camera to a computer or even directly to a printer. However, think twice about using this port. Why? Well, for two reasons. Why put unnecessary wear and tear on the camera when it's a lot easier to remove the memory card and use standalone reader? Or even better, use a reader that's built into your computer. A $1,000 camera makes an expensive alternative to a $15 card reader. And second, even though the D80 is an excellent camera, you probably aren't going to get the best results by printing straight from the camera without first taking the time to do some enhancements on your computer. Unless you have a good reason to do quick turnaround on-site printing, I highly recommend that you shoot your photos, load them into the computer, improve them with some simple enhancements, and then print them out. On the back side of the camera, we find the greatest number of dials, buttons, switches, and other controls. It might look complicated at first, but don't worry. Once you've learned the basic layout, you'll be able to change any setting you want quickly and easily. The most dominant feature on the rear of the D80 is a large LCD monitor that is sharp and easy to view at any angle. The LCD actually does double duty. One, it's used to navigate through the camera's menu system. And two, it's used to review your pictures and see what you've shot. Just above the LCD is the viewfinder. It's clear, bright, and a pleasure to use, which is very important because unlike point-and-shoot cameras that allow you to display a live moving picture on the LCD to compose your shot, With an SLR, the only way to see what you're shooting is through the viewfinder. There's a full array of status information available in the viewfinder, including the focus brackets, the focus indicator, shutter speed, aperture, and the remaining capacity of the memory card. Other information might also be displayed too, depending on your current camera setup. So if you're following along with me, your viewfinder might not match this viewfinder exactly. The focus of the viewfinder optics can be adjusted to suit your own eyesight by turning the diopter adjustment control until the focus brackets and the icons at the bottom appear sharp. Next to the diopter adjustment control is the auto exposure lock and auto focus lock button. We'll see how it's used later. We've already talked about the main command dial, so let's jump down to the multi-selector control. It functions like a joystick, and as you'll see, it's used for many functions. Just below it is the focus selector lock switch. This allows you to lock in the currently selected focus area in the viewfinder, so it can't be changed accidentally with the multi-selector. However, even with this switch in the lock position, you'll still be able to use the multi-selector for all other functions. I recommend that you leave this unlocked most of the time. The OK button is pretty self-explanatory. Anytime you want to make a selection from the menus, you just press the OK button. Over on the left side of the back of the camera, there are 6 additional buttons that have multiple functions each. At the top is the delete button, or trash button as I like to call it. Sometimes you'll know right away that a photo you took is no good. So why not just get rid of it and free up some space on the memory card? You can do that with the delete button. Whenever there's a photo displayed on the LCD monitor, press the delete button once and a confirmation screen will appear. Press the delete button again to confirm the deletion, and the picture is gone, so be careful. Next, there's the playback button, menu button, protect button, thumbnail button, and playback zoom button. These all work closely with each other, so it makes sense to talk about them all at once. Images can be viewed on the monitor at any time by pressing the playback button. The most recently taken image or the last one you viewed is shown first. You can view other images by using the multi-selector. Press the left arrow to view the previous photo and press the right arrow to go to the next one. You can tell which image you're looking at by noting the numbers that are displayed in the lower right-hand corner. The digits to the left of the slash tell you the frame number, and the numbers to the right of the slash tell you how many images are on the memory card. Later I'll show you how you can display a lot more information about each photo, such as the shutter speed that was used, the aperture, the time and date when it was taken, the white balance setting, and more. Whenever you're playing back images, they can be viewed individually or as thumbnails by pressing the thumbnail button. You can choose to show either 4 images per page or 9. The arrow buttons on the multi-selector switch can be used to scroll through the images. Each photo is individually numbered, and a bar on the right side of the screen tells you where you are in relation to the rest of the photos stored on the card. When you find a photo that you want to view full screen, just press the OK button to exit the thumbnail view. And if full screen view isn't good enough to see the details, for example, if you wanted to check to see if an image was in focus, you can press the playback zoom button repeatedly to zoom in. Each time you press the button, the image is magnified a little more. To decrease the magnification, press the thumbnail button to zoom back out. While the image is magnified, you can scroll around to see other parts of the image by using the arrow buttons. If you want to see the next or previous image with the same magnified view, just rotate the main command dial to go forward or back. Whenever you're finished, just press the OK button to return to the normal full screen view. If you've got an important image on the memory card that you want to prevent being accidentally erased, press the Protect button. Whenever you see the key icon overlay on any picture, that means it's locked and can't be deleted. of the D80's most important functions can only be accessed via the menu screens, and those are displayed on the monitor by pushing the menu button. The color-coded display with intuitive keywords facilitates easy viewing and speedy navigation. By the end of this DVD, you should have no problem navigating menus and making changes. But for now, let's skip the menus because there's a whole chapter devoted to them later on. You may have noticed that 3 of the buttons on this side of the camera also have labels written above them. That's because they aren't just used for playback functions, they are also used to change important camera settings while you're shooting. By pressing the WB button and turning the main command dial, you can change the white balance setting, which is displayed on the control panel. To change the ISO setting, just hold down the button and turn the main command dial. The same thing goes for image quality and image size. To change the image quality, hold the button down and rotate the main command dial. And to change the image size, hold down the button and rotate the sub-command dial on the front of the camera. Each of these settings can also be changed with the camera's menu system, but you'll quickly appreciate the convenience of having dedicated buttons right at your fingertips. On this side of the camera, you'll find the slot for the memory card. The door is open just by sliding back, but you should always make sure that the camera is turned off before inserting or ejecting the card. If you forget, chances are nothing bad will happen, but it's just good practice to turn the power off before removing the memory card, the battery, or the lens. Pressing on the card briefly will eject it. The D80 uses secure digital memory cards for storage, and I suggest having 1 or 2 1-gigabyte cards would be a good place to start. Paying a premium for high-speed cards isn't necessary, so buy whatever is expensive. Memory cards must be formatted before they can be used for the first time, and later on, whenever you want to completely erase all the images from a card and start shooting with a clean slate. I recommend that you